Greetings, everybody. We are in Chapter 8, and Chapter 8 has a whole bunch of interesting things in it, I feel, and one is all about this brand map kind of strategic approach to a brand reflection. So, this whole word of brand, as already introduced to you, is complex. And there's so many elements to it that even when I talk about this chapter, I don't even want to talk about it all together because they are distinctly different uses of and tools within this brand idea. So, welcome back. We are talking about building a brand, and we are transitioning between our strategy worksheet and section into our operational worksheet and section and the tactics that we're going to decide based on the target markets we've selected for our organization and how we use those tools in the marketing toolkit to make that happen. But we kind of want one other concept to be embedded in our knowledge base in terms of our thinking about marketing for one, but also in our philosophy about it and the tools available, but also how we think about this organization that we're writing this marketing plan for. So I want to walk through concepts about building a brand as the chapter introduces a little bit, but show you some real life examples and very personal examples of things that I've had the pleasure of working with to try and help organizations in our field rethink how they create a brand, but more specifically in this chapter, almost a brand identity. And have we, based on everything we know about this organization, their quality, their look, their feel, their values, their beliefs, their objectives, everything we've learned in the whole strategy section, do we feel like how they're portraying themselves to be reflective of all of those strengths and their weaknesses and opportunities and threats? So that SWOT analysis comes to play right here. What we've learned, and then more specifically how this market that we're working on actually sees this organization and brand. So stay with me in terms of moving from strategy to tactics and this concept. And one of the little secret actions I'm going to ask that you take this time and thinking about a brand. So sit back, relax. Well, don't sit back and relax. Get into it with me, because here we go. So the idea of a brand, if you Googled it right now, you would get a gazillion. That's what I call that number. 95 million. It changes every day, so it's probably a billion now. But branding or brand is one of the hottest topics in marketing for years. I would say for 10 years. It's been the topic. Big data is now the greatest topic, but branding is the buzzword. People throw it out there like we know what we're talking about, and everybody does it. Well, what about your brand? And and what is a brand and how it is. So the introduction video I did this week with some of our guest speakers introduced that concept and planting a seed about it, what a brand is. But what I want you to know about this topic is it's complex. It's not incredible. It is defined, but people's perception of how it's defined isn't well understood. And there's a lot of chatter about it, and you can see this. So it's a hot topic. It's something we need to better embrace and understand the distinctions within. So what do we mean by that, and what is it? Well, a brand is all of these things listed here. It's really not only just the symbol of what our organization is, it's the meaning behind and the feeling behind that symbol, because it is absolutely everything we do in this organization. It's everything we've looked at in this organization has all helped build and create this brand identity and this brand feeling, and it is who they are. So what we're looking at today more is how that is visually represented. But it does represent everything they've done. And ultimately, as we introduced at the beginning of this whole journey about marketing, it's the idea of the promise that an organization makes to us. It's the way they have conveyed not only who they are, but what they're going to do for us, give to us, help us experience with them. Again, recognize whether I'm an external consumer, or a visitor or a guest, or an employee, a shareholder, a volunteer, it's the promise this organization is making, and they do that in some very simple tools that help convey that promise. So everything happens for a reason, the old proverb, and in branding, that's the case too. Things happen because we've presented them in this way, in this manner, etc. So we're going to better define it as brand is an asset. Just like capital, equipment, or people are an asset to an organization, so is this brand, because it really represents everything we're doing, and we're going to share that with people, everything we do, in some very simple ways. But those simple ways are incredibly important because it's conveying everything about us as an organization and what we mean, what we value, how we act, what we do. So in a few simple tools, we're looking at a brand identity that represents incredibly deep meaning about it is. So it's a set of expectations that a stakeholder, customer, employee, investor, board member, volunteer, I know you get it. I keep talking about it, but I want you to get it. Marketing is about everything within everything in an organization, and it's for all of these various target markets that work for us, that volunteer for us, that invest in us, that experience us. So it's those set of expectations that a stakeholder experiences with our organization and forms that image or that feeling of what we do. It's about everything, including the 5 phases of the experience. Don't forget that. And our goal here, when we look at the imagery we create in this brand, is to have favorable recall based on realistic expectations of a delivery of what we do. We don't want to create in this brand identity something we're not and something we can't be. And so it goes back to, for me, early on, if our why is really solid, then creating this identity is a lot more fun. If we're not in this organization for the right reasons and we are not acting with those solid beliefs and values and systems, then it makes this exercise incredibly challenging because we're not delivering what we promise, and we're setting ourselves up, and we don't want to do that. So Sir Richard Branson once said, "A product or service only becomes a brand when it is imbued with profound values that translate into fact and feeling that employees project and customers embrace." So what a brand does, it promises people emotionally what they're going to have happen. Experience with us as an employee, experience as a volunteer, experience as a consumer or an investor. It states their purpose for being there, and it describes this experience in a visual manner and has them have instant recall when looking at that, and really establishes our market position. So go back to the positioning exercise you have done and think about it like that chess game move. Like, how are we viewed in the eyes of this target market with this visual representation that has incredibly deep meaning of who we are, how we act, and what we're promising to them. So here's what we should do. With this whole branding kind of exercise, we want to start with, we've been looking at all of the deeper meaning behind it, their values, their beliefs, their actions, the quality they deliver, their practices. That all represents this brand. But now we're going to transition to how all of that is conveyed in some brand identity, a name, a logo, a brochure, a website. And you've started to look at some of those items in this organization, but now I want you to look at it in terms of the market segment you're targeting. Become that target market and look at this brand and evaluate it in their eyes. Also we really take 3 steps. So we evaluate it in the eyes of each target market. We develop a strategy of how that imagery, that identity can be better defined, and then we enhance or reestablish that brand image that reflects the eyes of the market segment that we're targeting. So more and more, as we look at our organizations in our industry, we're going to see some really embracing of distinct target markets being addressed visually with messaging all to meet their individual needs. So we'll see an organization with different slogans depending on the different markets they might be trying to reach. We're going to see organizations with a clear relationship across their messaging, but that their messaging is very different depending on the target market, again, they're going after. We're going to get better and better at that. We see lots of organizations doing it, and we'll make some note of that, but we're going to get really fine-tuned. But we're going to look first kind of big picture. So when we think about brand continuum, our chapter talks very specifically about like going from brand acknowledgement, recognizing the need to establish a brand, that everything we do is part of something bigger, and the importance of having a look, a concept, a feel that can be shared and transferred to people when we communicate. But through this continuum of kind of brand loyalty, and really that ultimate branding is when we have a really solid brand, is when we have a lot of loyalty. A loyalty in our staff, our volunteers, a loyalty in our consumers, that they become these brand ambassadors, we call them, right? People who are out aggressively and actively selling what we do, sharing with others these positive experiences, telling people to come, have an experience with us, come work for them, come volunteer for them, come participate with them, because you're going to love it. That is brand loyalty, meaning our ultimate goal here is to have this continuum of super high quality, that we have, in essence, a workforce, marketing, consumer-based marketing, our stakeholders all marketing, communicating about the great things we do. So in kind of a simple way, this chapter again in Figure 1 is looking at this continuum that some organizations, every organization is at different places of this brand continuum. So let's look at first then 3 steps of the process: brand evaluation, brand strategy, brand embracing, redesign, relook, refeel, reformatting. So brand evaluation first. And when we look at brand evaluation, we're going to use all of that primary and secondary information that we've gathered to look at what do people think of us, what do they think of our imagery, our messaging, our tactics, etc. So that brand evaluation includes looking at our organization as well as others we might admire, benchmarking organizations, looking at our organization compared to our competitors. What do they do? And we've spent some time already doing that, but we're going to look at it a little more formally with the brand identity elements first. And then evaluating all we do from the eyes of all of our stakeholder groups or our target markets, right? And now it's your turn too.